Hi everybody. I'm Deb Samuels from Lexington, Massachusetts, member of the Japan Society of Boston. How many people are going to be cooking with me today? Is anybody cooking along with us? Liam and Kathy, are you cooking with us too? The Gevlins, I don't know if they can hear us, but all right. Well, at least we have one pair of chefs over there. Okay. So just briefly, I will tell you why a person who looks like me is teaching you about Japanese cooking. When I was 20 years old in 1972, now you all know how old I am, I went on a study abroad program with Colgate University to Japan. We had to learn Japanese before we went on this program. And so I studied Japanese here in Boston before we went. And my husband, who was my childhood sweetheart, and I went on this trip together. And we have now lived in Japan for a total of 12 years over this long period of almost 49 years. He is a professor of Japanese politics at MIT, and I teach about Japanese cuisine. So these programs and exchanges really can make a huge difference in one's life. I hope you all will have an opportunity, the young ones, to go to another country. Okay, so today we're going to be making miso ramen. I'm sure everybody here loves ramen. Usually there are generally three types of ramen. Shio ramen, which is the salt-based, and the soup is basically just the flavor of the bones. That could be chicken and pork and beef bones all together, and they cook for a really long time. Then there's shoyu ramen, which is flavored with soy sauce and also that wonderful bone broth. And there is miso ramen. And different areas in Japan have different specialties. I think miso ramen was originally a specialty of Hokkaido and Sapporo. And so we're going to be making that today. But our broth that we're making does not take 24 hours to make. We're going to have a delicious bowl of miso ramen with a delicious broth in only about 25 minutes. So I hope everybody will be able to stick with me. All right. In 1 minute, I'm just going to switch the camera like a cooking TV show. I just want to say that ramen has 4 parts to it. One is the soup, which we talked about, the dashi. That is very often a bone broth dashi. The next part is the noodle, the ramen noodle. And that is usually a wheat-based noodle made with very often egg and sometimes very wavy. It can be fresh or dried. And the next is the topping, which common toppings are a hard-boiled egg, a piece of char siu, which is a sliced pork, and nori and corn. And then the other part of it is the tare, which is the sauce. And that's what gives it the flavor. And today we are going to be having miso as the tare. All right, so I'm going to switch my camera, and I hope everybody who is going to be cooking with us is ready, and everyone else will, whoops, wrong one, watch along to be able to cook at another time. I want to make sure, Yuko, that I'm still the host. It said, there we go. All right, very good. Share. All right, so now we're going to get started, and let me do that. So what I have here are all my ramen ingredients all ready. And when you're cooking, you should have everything all laid out so you're not running around the kitchen looking for something at a time. Today I'm going to be making, you need 2 pots. You need 1 pot that is going to be for your soup and toppings together. And you need 1 pot that is filled with water so that you can boil your noodles in it. So you need 2 pots today, all right? And your ingredients are here. We have bean sprouts, corn. Our meat today is ground pork. You can use ground chicken, you can use ground turkey, you can use ground beef, but pork is generally the traditional one, and that will give this soup a lot of flavor. And I'm using fresh ramen noodles today. They cook in 2 minutes. So you need to be aware of what type of ramen noodles that you're using, and you'll see the package for how long they're going to cook. All right. And then we have the tare ingredients, which is miso. And I'm using today, this is organic miso. You don't have to use organic miso. I'm using a shiro miso, it's a white miso. And it is the mildest of all of the miso. You can use red, aka miso, or you can use awase miso, which is a mixture of red and white. But today I'm going to use the white. The other seasonings are soy sauce, sesame oil, and sugar, and a little bit of salt and pepper. And the aromatics, which are what also gives this a lot of depth of flavor, is fresh ginger and garlic cloves. Okay, so those are our ingredients. But what we're going to do is I'm going to start with the last thing that you put on top of the ramen, which are scallions. And I'm going to show you kind of a cool Japanese technique for cutting them and also for presenting them in a very cool way. These are curly bits of scallions that go right on top of the ramen. It doesn't look, if you put it straight or just cut it in rings, it doesn't make a difference, but this is really very beautiful to look at. And in Japan and in Japanese cuisine, we say "Meide taberu," you eat with your eyes. So I'm just going to show you a fun little technique. Have a bowl of water, cold bowl of water, and 1 scallion cube. The recipe today is for 4 bowls of ramen, okay? And recently when we've been making it, the soup has been a little mild, so we're going to get a chance to add a little bit more seasonings today. But anyway, so what you're going to do is cut off the tip, and we're going to use the whole thing, and I'm just going to cut off the very top there, and I will cut my scallions in 3 pieces, okay? Is everybody with me? All right, Mayumi, maybe you can keep an eye on everybody and let me know if there are any questions.
Sure.
So you can use this nice big knife that I have, but for small jobs like this, I tend to like to use a small knife. So I'm just going to cut this down the center like that. Okay, right in half. And then I'm just going to cut it in shreds like this. My knife skills are not as good as most Japanese, but because they would be doing this like this, but I wanted to get them really nice and thin. And you can spend more time doing this later, but I just wanted to show you how to do this because it will take about 20 minutes for them to curl up like that. You can also put an ice cube in the water and it will help to curl the scallions a little bit better. So just keep shredding your scallions in long, thin pieces, okay? Now, you don't have to do this. You can also just cut them just like that in little half moons or circles, and it'll be just as delicious. But we like to have people look at a bowl and go, wow. Okay, so there are the scallions. I'm going to put them aside. And the next thing we're going to do is our garlic and ginger. Okay, and these are known as aromatics, and these will be adding flavor. We are not cooking the garlic and ginger. we are just putting it into our tare. And so it has much more impact and more flavor when you do it that way. And here is my fresh ginger. And I just want to show you a very cool way of peeling the ginger. You can take the spoon, back of the spoon like this, and just go along the skin. And you see that you lose very little of the meat when you peel your ginger that way. Okay, should be nice and fresh. Somebody in one of the classes asked if they could use dried ginger, but the taste is so different that I don't think it would work. I didn't try it myself, but I don't think it's a good substitute. So fresh ginger or no ginger. A lot of people don't like it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slice it. I'm not using this whole thing, but it's just easy for me to do. Just going to slice, take that end off, about 3 pieces, 3 or 4 pieces, okay? And as I said, if you are using 4, you'll be using 4 cups of water. If you're doing it for 4 people, we need a little bit more seasoning here, okay? So I've got my ginger peeled, and usually people will take the broad end of the knife, but since we have a couple of kids here, I'm going to show you a trick that we do when we teach kids how to chop up ginger without a knife. We use a can, and you just can break up the ginger just like this, and it really, and you can see how this can be a great way, even for little kids, to be doing it. Normally, what I do is I slice the ginger, and you can see it has a lot of fibers in it. Slice the ginger, and then I use the broad part of the knife to smash it. And once you smash the ginger like that, it breaks up very easily. Okay, and then oops, the bell rang. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the ginger in the bowl that we're going to mix all the tare in. And the next thing we will do, if you're with me, is the garlic. And same thing, very easy to break up the garlic by smashing it like that. And you just peel off the garlic skin, just like that, all right? And again, you can also do this with a can. Chop up the garlic pretty quickly, which is a great thing to do with kids, or you can continue chopping it like that. And you see it starts it, and then you can. So I would recommend that we use 2 to 3 cloves of garlic, okay? And put that in there, and let's chop up 1 more piece. I'm only making 2 cups. I'm making for 2 servings because this will be my 4th bowl of ramen this week. And if I have 4 servings, I will eat all of them. So I need to just do 2 servings. So I know some of you are making 4, and please take your time doing that. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. And if you're cooking along with me, if I'm going too fast, just let me know. Okay. What I would also recommend that you do now is that you put your pot of water on your stove for making the ramen noodles. You should turn it on so that it will be ready to go when we're ready to go. Okay. So now I have my ginger and garlic in here, the next thing I'm going to do is to add my miso. For my 2 cups, the recipe says 3 tablespoons, but if you've got 4 cups of water and you're making it for 4 people, I'm going to suggest that you do 4 or 5 tablespoons. It will give you a little bit more flavor. It's delicious either way, but I think we've been finding it that we could use that a little bit more flavor. So 2 and 3. I'm going to stop here, but if you're making 4 servings, I suggest that you add another 1 to 2 tablespoons of miso. You can always add more later as well. Okay? There you go. All right, so that on the side. The only other thing I will say about miso, many of you already know this, but some miso also includes dashi, which is a fish stock. And that's okay if you know what you're getting. But that also gives it an extra flavor. And they do that because they're making miso soup, and it eliminates you having to make your own dashi. So I just like to buy plain miso, so I can add whatever I want to it. Okay, so that. And the next thing we're going to do is add a tablespoon of soy sauce. Now, I am not going to pour this over this bowl, because if I miss, too much soy sauce is not a good thing. So in general, I always measure off the side on another plate. Okay, so I've got 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. If you're making 4, you might want to add another tablespoon of soy sauce. Okay. And then the next thing is 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. Pouring that in. Okay. I use kadoya. It's a Japanese sesame oil. And the important part here is that it's a roasted or toasted sesame oil. Okay, I think everybody probably knows that, but it's always a good idea for me to remind people. And then I have a teaspoon of sugar. And that's going in. And so what we have here now is called a tare, and you mix that all together. So whoever is cooking with me, are you with me now? Is everybody with me?
Debrah, did you mention 2 teaspoons sugar?
Oh,
the ingredient said 1 teaspoon sugar.
For me, it was 1 teaspoon of sugar. I'm making 2. If you're making 4, I would recommend almost doubling all of the seasonings that we had. So instead of 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, you would use 2. 1 teaspoon of sugar, you would use 2 teaspoons of sugar. Thank you for reminding me, Mayumi. Okay. So we want you to have a tasty experience here. Now, the other thing I will tell you, if you like spicy ramen, there are so many different ways that you can add spice to this. A lot of American kitchens have sriracha. This is sort of a Southeast Asian sauce. This is a good way to do it. This is a chili bean sauce, tobancha. And if you add a little bit of heat, you can have a spicy ramen. You can add it into here now. If you don't want to add it at this point, I'll show you how to add it later. Another way is Korean gochujang, which is a Korean red pepper paste. And that will add heat to this too. If you don't want to add spice to the soup, later on we'll be putting a topping on of togarashi, ichi togarashi, or you could use rayu, but that goes on at the end. All right, so we've got that, and we're going to set this aside. All right, and I'm just going to clear this off, and now we're going to get ready to put our soup together. And just give me a second to move this over so I can get everything over here. So I'm all done with this. And so it's now easy for me to just pick up my tray and put it over on the other side. I like to try to clean as I go, but I don't always practice what I preach. So here we go. Today I'm using a wok, but I'm only using a wok because it's shallow and you will be able to see the cooking going on inside. Make sure you have your water for your ramen start to boil now, so that will be ready. All right. So now I'm going to turn on my, whoops. Make sure I've got it in the right direction. There we go. Okay, so the three things that are going in there are the ground pork. I have bean sprouts today that I'm using. If you don't have bean sprouts, you can use cabbage, and you just slice the cabbage very thin. And I have corn, okay? And the other thing that you will need, again, if you're making 4 servings, you need 4 cups of water. I'm just using 2 cups of water today because I'm only making 2 servings. But if you're making the full 4 cups of water. All right, so my oil is now hot. I've got a tablespoon of oil in here, and now I'm going to put in the ground pork. And please feel free to ask any questions that you have. You want to cook the pork until it loses its pink color. All right, and we want to break it up here. If you are a vegetarian and you're not using ground pork, the other day we did a class and somebody used Beyond Meat and they did that. But when you're substituting something for meat, you usually need to substitute something savory that will give you a lot of flavor. And mushrooms are a very good substitute. So even if you're using tofu, tofu does not have the same kind of umami that mushrooms have. But you can certainly add that as well, but you'll need something else. Another way to add a little bit more flavor would be to use either chicken stock or beef stock instead of water, or vegetable stock. Okay. So now I'm just sauteing or stir frying the pork until it just loses all its pink colors. And from now on, things are going to go very fast. So anybody who's cooking with me, are you with me? Miami, can you double check on anybody who's cooking? Let me know.
Yeah. How's everybody?
Doing all right. You add the water right now, right? Or is it just are you just browning the meat with oil?
Just browning the meat now. Just
Oh,
browning.
right.
Okay.
I just wrote it. Hold on.
Okay. And on the stove, I have over behind me is a pot of water getting ready to boil, or getting to bring up to the boil. All right. So now I've lost the pink color, and I'm going to pour in directly the bean sprouts and the corn. The corn not only adds color, but it also adds a sweetness to the topping. All right. And just going to stir fry this. And if you don't have the bean sprouts, use shredded cabbage. But something like that. And I will also tell you another trick for seasoning and flavor. I didn't put this in there, but if you take a little bit of salt and put it on top of your vegetables before you add any sauce, it adds a little bit of flavor. So I just put a little bit of salt there. And I think I will also add a little bit of pepper. Okay.
Deborah, sometimes it's a little harder to hear, so maybe you can talk a little closer to your speaker.
to the speaker. Okay, I'm going to move this up a little bit. All right, so you can hear me a little bit better. Okay, it's a little hard to hear with the cooking going on. So I'm just going to bring this to a nice, I'm on a medium heat here. Whoops, bring it down a little bit. And I'm just getting all the vegetables and the pork and the corn to mix up and just wilt just a little bit. All right.
Deb, I'm thinking this is fantastic that you use this for miso ramen, but that looks delicious in itself with a side dish of rice.
Exactly, it is. It looks delicious. And actually somebody who was in one of our other classes just took the miso, the tare, and put it on there. And that's exactly what they did. They had it like this and they put it on the noodles or rice, kind of just like a pasta sauce. So they didn't make it into the soup. That was also very interesting. So now you can take the water, pour it directly in, like that. Okay. And so here, the meat is what helps to season the soup. And the last thing that we'll add is the miso tare. Sometimes when you have these kind of flavorings in different miso, they will take a spoonful of this and put it in the bottom of your bowl and then add the soup to that. But in our cooking classes, we try to make things easy for people so that there are not so many steps, and that after people finish seeing this, they go, oh, I can do that, instead of that's just too hard for me. So we've definitely simplified these recipes a little bit. So now I'm just going to bring this up to a simmer, and as soon as it comes up and I see the water bubbling, that is when I'll add the miso. Do you want to check your water? I can hear that mine's boiling now. A very useful tool is a pair of tongs. So if you have a pair of tongs, that would be great for you to get them now. We are not going to be straining the pasta, the ramen into a strainer. We're just going to be lifting the pasta right out and putting it directly into our bowl. All right, so while I wait for this to come up to a simmer, I'm going to show you my setup for my bowl. And I'm sure all of you, and I'd love to hear in Minnesota where your great ramen shops are. I'm sure there are plenty around there. I've been to several Japanese restaurants in Minnesota. So this is the opposite direction, but I've got a nice bowl here, a rather deep bowl for the ramen. I have my chopsticks, and if you'll notice, the tips of my chopsticks have ridges. The easier for me to grab the noodles with, okay? Try not to use slippy, shiny chopsticks with this. And here's my little frog-chan, my hashioki. And then the other important element is a spoon, kind of a Chinese style spoon. Ramen is originally from China and came to Japan with Chinese immigrants. And it is now, people think of it as Japanese because the Japanese have brought it to this amazing gourmet height. All right, so here we go. Everything's ready. I'm going to keep this on the side here. And now I'm going to add the miso right here to the soup. Right. And so I don't waste anything. These are my favorite kitchen tools. This is saibashi, which is cooking chopsticks. You see how long they are. I don't burn my hands when I go like that. And so you see I've added the miso, right in here. And so as not to waste any, I will just take some of that warm water and, all right. If your water is boiling, now is the time to put your noodles in, all right? So I'm going to take my fresh noodles and I'm going to put them over on the stove and they will be ready in 2 minutes, okay? Look at the back of your package. These are fresh noodles. And in they go. In 2 minutes, they will be ready. All right, so let's gather our other toppings, which is, now I said hard-boiled egg, but it's usually a softer, like a semi-hard-boiled egg, that when you cook hard-boiled eggs, you cook them for 9 minutes. You cook this egg for 7 minutes. So let's see, and I want to bring you don't want to boil miso. So you want to bring it down to a very low simmer. Oops, not off completely, just a little simmer, okay? So let's get my other toppings ready here. Put this on the side. And let's see how I did with my egg. I can feel it's very squishy, so I think I've got a good texture inside. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, very good. I'm getting good at this. There, so I've got my eggs and they're all ready. And then of course you have your nori and your squares of nori like this. So it's very good to have everything organized and ready to go so that when you put your bowl together, everything is right at hand. And the other thing that you will need is a ladle, okay, for the soup. Right. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'm going to go check on my ramen noodles now. I think they're
So
just
Deb, if I can't find fresh ramen, for example, I can always use dry ramen, right? If it's available, and just follow the instruction on the package.
Yes, so in some, even if you want to use the instant ramen noodles, I use the noodles and I throw away the spice packet. Because if you look on the back of ramen packages, very often you're getting close to 1,980 milligrams of sodium, which is just about your daily limit. So that there's a lot of sodium in ramen. And there's also sodium in the noodles. It's not just the soup packet. But this allows you, when you make your own nutritious soup and tare, you can control what you put in it. All right. So who's cooking with me? Are you ready? Are you ready to get the noodles out now? And because we're moving on to our last step here. All right. Let me get my pot of water. I'm boiling noodles. And so what you're going to see now is I'm going to take the noodles out of the pot with my tongs, and I'm going to put them into the center of my bowl. Okay, let me just more. All right. If you are making 4 servings, get your 4 bowls ready and divide the noodles up among 4 bowls. Okay. One of these noodle nests, one is usually for 1 person. And as you can see, I'm kind of leaving it right there in the center. Okay.
Now, Deb, if just like pasta, you can also kind of control the firminess of the noodle, right? Like I like my ramen noodles kind of firm.
Okay, yeah.
I boil them a little bit less like maybe 30 seconds to even 1 minute less than what the package says. Because I like my katamen, as we say in Japanese, or really firm noodle.
That's a very good point. And it also will cook a little bit more in the soup. Unless you dunk these noodles into cold water, they're going to keep cooking very slowly, but you know, the heat will still get them to soften up, and then of course the soup will. So now what we're going to do is we've got our topping and our soup in here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take the soup out like that, all right? And just, I have my soup, and I'm going to pour it all around the side. Let me just reposition the camera so you can see that. And I'm pouring it around the side and over the top. What else you're going to notice about this is that there is a lot of space in this bowl, okay? Let me just turn this off. There's a lot of space in this bowl. You can see the beautiful design of the bowl. And that's also an important part of the eating experience with Japanese cuisine, especially with beautiful pieces of pottery. But people like to see the bowl. Now, I know a lot of ramen restaurants, you're going to get a pile high of ramen, but generally speaking, the Japanese show more restraint in putting amounts in bowls than we do. So keep a little bit of space, and you can always go back for seconds. Okawari. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take with your tongs the bean sprouts, the pork, and the corn, and you're going to put it right on the top. Okay, like that. You think it's hard to get out little bits of ground pork, but it all kind of comes out. And the whole meat is not the center piece of this. Seems like all of these different toppings play an equal role. So you want to also make sure that you get enough corn and bean sprouts on the top there. Okay. So that's about enough for one person there. Are you with me if you're cooking along? And now we're going to take, don't forget your scallions, put them on the side over here. You just pull back a little bit. And I'm going to put on, and usually it's, you can put on two, but I usually just put one egg, 1/2 of an egg, and a piece of nori. This is a little bit bigger, but let's see, it's gonna fold it off here and put my nori down. Okay, and now I'm going to take my scallions and put them in a little bit of a paper towel so that I dry them like that, and set them right on top. Okay, and then finally I'm going to take, again, we have two different kinds of Japanese peppers. One is ichimi, which it's just red pepper, tongarashi, and then this is shichimi, or 7 spices in this pepper. So it adds red pepper, it has sansho, it has yuzu, it has sesame seeds, has a bunch of different things. It's very, very tasty. And so the last thing I'll do is put some sprinkles of this on here. And that's where I like to add my heat.